Dr. Anica here. Thank you again for joining us for our new episode of this incredible series. I am so thrilled to welcome you to this conversation today. I am talking with my good friend and teacher, Altovise Laster. She is a phenomenal teacher of history and special education out of Brooklyn. Whoop, whoop. And she's going to join us today just to talk about what does it mean to be a teacher in the time of COVID-19. Thank you, Alta, for being here.
You're so welcome.
So we're going to go right into it. So my first question for you is, so many kids are being homeschooled right now, and a lot of parents are having to manage that almost for the first time, many of them. And I've heard comments like, I've never worked harder. And this by no means implies that a teacher's job is easy. But in the time of COVID, as a teacher, there's some real hardships I would imagine that you're having to face. So what do you feel are some of your biggest concerns in light of that?
So the biggest concern that I have right now is engagement, like keeping students engaged, writing lesson plans that are easy to follow because I'm not there, but also like that students want to do, because with high school students, I'm a high school teacher, relationship building is key, and students are not there with me doing the lessons. And so oftentimes they're distracted, they have family members who might have been affected by COVID-19. And so they're dealing with that. And
right.
You know, I've had trouble like getting some kids to email me back, to engage with me on Zoom. So engagement is definitely like something that I'm struggling with as an educator right now.
Absolutely. And I know that it's hard for a lot of students as well. I mean, I work with college students, and they're all telling me about how difficult it is to be engaged in the virtual classroom. So many distractions are around that. It's hard to really make it a priority. And even when they do try, awareness of what's happening outside of the greater world with this pandemic, it feels
right.
sort of not as the most important thing in their lives. So again, it gets pushed down even more so on that totem pole of priority. But for you, I know you were just saying that being a teacher in any respect is pretty tough anyway. And again, having to work with them remotely is just an added challenge. Have you noticed that your approach to teaching has shifted in any way as a result of this?
Oh yeah. I have learned to simplify all the ideas that I had about like my curriculum and how it's supposed to go for the year. That's out the window. And so I've had to like boil down to like, what are the essential things that this student or this group of students need to know in order to like move on to the next level. And that's hard. Like when you've worked really hard on a curriculum for years, it's hard to let go of your idea of what that's supposed to be, but you do it because you are communicating this value of care. Like I care about my students and I don't want them to feel overwhelmed, but it's hard because you're like, you need to know this, you know? That's really difficult. That's really difficult to like kind of sift through and say, well, what are the essential things that this student needs to know to help them be successful in the next year? Because I really worry about that. I worry about what the next year is going to bring and whether or not they're going to be prepared. I teach juniors, they're going into their senior year. So it's been really hard to kind of whittle it down to the essentials without overwhelming them, but also prepping them for what's ahead.
Absolutely. And I would imagine as you made that lesson plan, you thought, well, everything is essential, right? Like there's nothing that I'm putting in that's fluff work, but now you're having to cut even what you consider essential, right, out of the program.
Yeah.
You know? A lot of parents, I'm sure you've seen this too. I've seen a lot of memes and a lot of videos of parents talking about, you know, what kind of teacher are you? Are you the substitute teacher? Are you the gym teacher, right? I've also seen commentary about people saying, oh, I flunked this kid, you're out of my class, let's transfer you to other classes, all lamenting just about the stress of what it means to homeschooling, right? What tip would you give, or even strategy, practical advice would you give to parents who are genuinely overwhelmed by the task of teaching their kids and helping them to figure out how do they meet those educational demands? Because you just made a good point. there's next year. Your kid still has to sort of be promoted to the next year knowing certain key factors. And if they don't, that's going to compromise how they perform in the following year. So what tip, strategy would you offer to parents as they deal with the overwhelming demand of their child's education in the time of COVID?
Yeah, I think it's really important for parents to have a set schedule. One thing that, this is my 11th year of teaching, and one thing that I've learned about working with students is that they crave like sameness, they crave like structure. And then when that's gone, it's hard for them to be successful with learning. And so I say, like, create a schedule. Like, today we're going to work on math, and the more visual, the better. If you have to like make a poster, like, okay, this is when you have your Zoom meeting with your teacher, and then you're going to work on your reading. Like, have that schedule, have them wake up at the same time every day, try to eat lunch if you can. I think it's important for everybody to like make a schedule that works for their family, because I know that every situation is different, but having a set schedule is super important when remote learning needs to happen. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I would say, you know, even for adults, having a schedule is important, right? I last week I gave a bunch of tips to people about how to manage their mental health. And one of the things I shared was the importance of having a bit of a schedule and a routine and diversifying where you work and when you work, just to allow with engagement and motivation. So it absolutely makes sense that kids would need the same thing, right? That they would also benefit from that kind of rhythm.
Yeah, absolutely. They need the same thing that we need. They need mental health breaks. They need, you know, a set schedule. They need physical activity. All of those things that make us feel better about our days, like as adults, they need the same thing. And it's important that we do our best. I know, again, every situation is different, but if you can have some structure in their learning day, it is extremely helpful to get through this.
Absolutely. I know that in places like New York, they've canceled a lot of big exams, like the Regents, for example, but there's still this expectation that kids reach their academic milestones. We were just talking about needing to be promoted to the next year, and what happens this year is inevitably going to impact how they perform and what they know for the following year. Is there a resource, a website, a book perhaps that you'd recommend for parents and caretakers to really utilize as they support their kids in this time?
Yeah, there's so many. And just like as a side note, as an educator, I am really thankful for all of the free resources that different organizations have put out there. But I think that I would say, like, for younger readers, ReadWorks is something that I know that a lot of parents are using, and it's free. For older readers or readers at a higher level, the New York Times is a great resource. They have lesson plans, and they have things that are really engaging for students who are middle year or teenagers. I just learned about a new app called Socratic. I was helping my little cousin with her homework, and actually you can take a picture of a math problem, and it doesn't give you the answer, but it gives you the steps, like how do you solve this problem? So that was really helpful for her. And then, like, one major resource that I think a lot of parents don't really think of is, if you have contact with your school librarian, please reach out to them. Like, librarians are a wealth of resources. They know different websites. They know how to do research, like where to find information. And if you have a school librarian that's dedicated for like the school that your child is in, please contact the librarian, because our librarian like sends us a list of websites to like give our parents every single week. She sends a whole list. So, I mean, there are a lot of free things out there, but yeah, just look for things that are free. New York Times is great. ReadWorks is great. Socratic is great. Moby Math is another great one. Newsella. So there's so many things that are free now, because people understand that parents are home and may need some extra help with schoolwork.
Absolutely. You know, it's so interesting. I don't have children, full confession, but I just never thought of the librarian at the school as a resource, right? Outside of the school building, that is. And so that's wonderful. I really do think that is an accessible person who may have a different way of working than a teacher or even Google, right? Because Google has become the librarian for all of us.
Yeah.
But to have somebody who's studied and knows how to do research in that way can be such a valuable thing. I love that recommendation for sure. As we come to the end of this today, in 5 words or less, what would be something that you would say to parents and even perhaps to teachers everywhere that they should keep in mind as they weather the storm of this pandemic?
Okay, so 5 words, I think, or less, is that we'll get through this. It is difficult for everybody, no matter like what your profession is, no matter, how many people you have living in your home, how many students you're helping, whether you're single with no kids, we'll get through this. And we just have to be really flexible and, not get so attached to the way that things were before, but to just understand like life has changed for everybody. And it won't always be this way. And so we'll get through this. We'll get through this together. And then just keeping open communication, especially between parents and teachers, is important. We're here, we're online, we're Zooming with students and parents. So open communication and just flexibility, because it's hard for everyone. And we're going to get through it, but only if we work together as educators and parents.
Absolutely. I really agree with that. I think, on the one hand, it's the parent being flexible and thinking about, okay, how do I approach my child's education? It's not the way that the teacher would have done it, or it's not the way that I would like it to be, but given the demands and the limitations that we have, here's what works best. And for the teacher, perhaps you were just saying earlier, I have this incredible lesson plan that I spent all these years fine-tuning and perfecting, and now I have to toss it all. But being flexible enough to pull the true gems out of that and make it applicable and simple and usable for your kids is paramount in this time. So I really love this idea that if we all did our part and we all recognize that each person is doing the best that they can with what they have in this time, we really could all work together and get through it together. Yeah. Thank you so much, Alta, for just giving us your insights and your wisdom. I really appreciate having you here. And I hope it's fun. I guess it absolutely was fun. We should do it again. And to all of you watching, if you have questions or need anything at all from Alta or from myself, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section below. I'll be sure to see them, and I will definitely ensure that Alta sees those that are directed to her. But please stay tuned for more episodes, and we bring you all the data and all the information that we can just to help you and your loved ones survive in the time of COVID. Until next time, bye.